Well, here we are. I folded my arms and stared at the rusted cemetery gate. Midnight, a graveyard. The perfect setting for two completely fearless individuals. Two very brave people about to do something incredibly stupid. Lynn rocked back on her heels, hands stuffed into her hoodie pockets. No wimps here, we laugh in the face of ghosts. I nodded. Lynn smirked, and if we scream, it's just for dramatic effect. Obviously, gotta set the mood. I glanced at the gate, which swayed slightly in the wind with a low creak. You know, they say this place is haunted. Lynn scoffed. Wow, the abandoned graveyard at midnight. Haunted? No way. No, seriously, I said, lowering my voice. They say if you walk between the headstones, you hear whispers. Lynn rolled her eyes. Whispers? Ghosts should learn to project. That's what I think. And sometimes, I continued, leaning in, people go in, but they don't come out. Lynn stared at me deadpan. Uh-huh. And sometimes, people who tell bad ghost stories get left outside the cemetery alone. I grinned. So you are scared. I am not scared, Lynn said through gritted teeth. Great, I gestured toward the gate. After you. Lynn turned to the looming darkness beyond the fence, then back to me. You know what? Since I'm such a good friend, I'll let you have the honor. I gasped in mock offense. You'd rob me of this once-in-a-lifetime experience. Lynn put a hand over her heart. I insist. Okay, fine, I muttered. We'll go together. On three. Deal. 1, 2. Neither of us moved. 3? I asked hesitantly. 3, Lynn repeated, just as stilled. A gust of wind rustled the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. Somewhere deep in the cemetery, something creaked. Lynn cleared her throat. Okay. New dare. Touch the gate. I arched an eyebrow. Touch it? That's it? Unless you're scared. Please. I reached out and pressed my fingers against the cold, rusted metal. And then I wasn't outside the gate anymore. I stumbled forward, my sneakers crunching against dead leaves. The graveyard stretched out before me, headstones leaning like tired sentinels in the moonlight. Behind me, the gate stood shut. On the other side of it, Lynn gaped at me. What? How? Lynn took a step back. That's not funny, Sammy. I'm not joking. I turned and grabbed the bars. They didn't budge. Lynn hesitated, then reached out to the gate. The second her fingers brushed the metal, she vanished. Oh, come on! Lynn's voice came from beside me now. We spun to face each other, both breathing hard. The wind whispered through the cemetery, carrying something that sounded suspiciously like laughter. I swallowed. So, new plan. Yeah, Lynn muttered. How about we never listen to each other again? It felt like hours we were struggling with the gate, desperate to get out, both frustrated and a little panicked, despite pretending we weren't. I was starting to think maybe we should give up on the gate when I heard it. A voice from behind, dripping with sarcasm. Yeah, that's not gonna work. I spun around, almost tripping over my own feet. There was a person standing there. A person I swore I recognized, but I couldn't place from where. Lynn and I both froze, caught between confusion and a hint of unease. Who are you? Lynn asked, narrowing her eyes, trying to figure out if she should be suspicious. The person gave a quick, dry laugh. Oh, right, sure. I'm the one who's supposed to explain how you're stuck in this mess, huh? Classic. They shook their head like they'd seen this scenario 1,000 times. Stuck? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Is there a way out? Because we've been working on this gate for, like, ever. And the stranger raised a hand, cutting me off. You're wasting your time. There's no way out right now. Not unless you, know a secret exit no one's bothered to mention. They looked at the cemetery, and a faint shiver went through me. But you're better off not being out here anyway. Not being out here? Lynn scoffed. What does that mean? The stranger glanced around, their eyes darting nervously. Listen, the graveyard's not a friendly place at midnight. Trust me, you'd be better off taking cover. Cover? I repeated, trying to make sense of what they were saying. Where? The stranger motioned toward the looming shadows of the crypt nearby. That way. Stay inside. Just trust me. I shot Lynn a glance, but she just shrugged. She didn't seem to be in any rush to move, but the strange weight in the air, the whispers that I'd started hearing, made it clear we weren't alone. Fine, I said, moving first. But if you try to lock us in there with a bunch of ghosts, I swear I will punch you. Just saying. The stranger didn't answer, just started walking toward the crypt. We followed, the ground feeling colder with every step. The whispering only grew louder, like 100 voices trying to speak over one another, all muffled and urgent. We reached the crypt and I stepped inside, immediately feeling a shift in the air. The whispering was clearer now, almost too clear. It didn't sound right. I turned to the stranger. So, I thought we were supposed to be safe in here? This feels wrong. Lynn grunted as she entered, glancing around with a frown. Yeah, I think this place is haunted too. The stranger's eyes flickered to us, a strange tension in the air. You guys don't get it. You're the problem. What? Lynn blurted, hands on her hips. Excuse me? I gave the stranger a suspicious look. The problem? What do you mean? They ran a hand through their hair, suddenly looking uncomfortable. Well, I didn't expect this. You two are still alive. You shouldn't be. I stared at them, trying to process what they just said. Wait, you're saying we shouldn't be alive? The stranger sighed dramatically, like this whole situation was just so typical. Look, I didn't exactly get a say in the whole death thing, and I didn't expect to be stuck in a cemetery with a couple of live people either. But now we're all here. Wait, Lynn interrupted, pointing at them. Are you trying to tell us you're dead? The stranger looked at her like she'd just asked the most obvious question in the world. Well, yeah. What did you think? I'm not exactly wearing this as a costume. Lynn blinked, then gave me a wide-eyed look. Okay, hold on. Hold on. We're stuck in a cemetery with a ghost and I'm the one who's supposed to be freaking out? Probably, the ghost said with a grin that was more unsettling than comforting. I couldn't help it. I let out a nervous laugh. You could have said that sooner. Seriously, a little heads up would have been nice. Oh, hey, I'm a ghost, by the way. The ghost gave a nonchalant shrug. Not really something I keep on a name tag, you know. Lynn threw up her hands. This is ridiculous. Of all the places we could be, we're stuck in a crypt with a ghost who couldn't even bother to introduce themselves properly. What's next? Well, the ghost said, stepping closer, their expression turning more serious. Next, we figure out how to keep you two alive a little longer, 'cause trust me, things are about to get a lot worse. A chill ran down my spine and the whispering from outside the crypt intensified, now distinctly more menacing. I turned to Lynn, voice low. What if we're not supposed to get out of here? Shut up, Sammy, Lynn muttered, already stepping farther into the crypt. We'll get out. We have to. But even as she said it, the feeling of dread grew. The whispers were so close now that I could almost hear words, if only they weren't so distorted. The ghost glanced at us, eyes dark with something close to sympathy. You might want to brace yourselves for a long night, because the cemetery has a way of keeping people. The door of the crypt slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang. The door slamming shut behind us echoed in the crypt like a final warning. I instinctively stepped back, my heart hammering in my chest. Okay, what the hell is going on? Lynn's voice was tight and she was practically vibrating with nervous energy. She looked around the crypt, searching for an exit, but there were none. It was just stone walls, old caskets, and the eerie, suffocating darkness that was closing in. The ghost, who was clearly not interested in helping us understand the logistics of life after death, stood in the corner, their expression grim. "We don't have time," they said, eyes darting to the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here, but now that you have—" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "What do you mean, now that we have? What happens now?" The ghost stared at us, then glanced over at the far side of the crypt where the whispering had grown louder. The whispers now felt almost alive, like fingers were brushing against my skin from all directions. It made my skin crawl. "You're in danger," the ghost said, and I felt my stomach drop. "There's a reason why people go missing here. There's something in the cemetery, something old, something that feeds on fear and living souls." Lynn's eyes were wide. "What? Is that why you're here? To protect us from whatever the hell that is?" The ghosts shook their heads slowly. "No, I can't protect you. I'm not. I'm not alive anymore." Their voice faltered for a second, almost as if they were regretful of this. "But I can warn you." A cold gust of wind swept through the crypt, carrying with it a distant rumble of thunder, though there was no storm in sight. My breath caught in my throat. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The whispering grew louder, now mingling with guttural growls. I glanced at Lynn, but she was frozen, staring straight ahead at the blackest part of the crypt, where the darkness seemed to swell. "I can feel it," she whispered, her voice shaking. "It's not just in the wind. It's alive." The ghost's face twisted with regret. "It's already chosen you." "What?" I spat, panic rising in my chest. "Chosen us for what?" Suddenly, the shadows in the crypt shifted. I couldn't explain it. One moment, they were just dark patches on the walls, and the next they were moving, creeping toward us like a living thing. The air turned heavy with the smell of decay and rot. The walls seemed to pulse. "Get back," the ghost warned, stepping in front of us as if to shield us from something we couldn't see. But it was too late. The ground beneath our feet began to tremble, as if the entire crypt were about to collapse. The shadows in the corners started to stretch out, swirling like smoke, their whispers turning into guttural, incoherent shouts. "No!" the ghosts shouted, their voice straining. "It's here!" And then the shadows attacked. I felt an icy grip on my arm, pulling me backward. Lynn cried out beside me, but I couldn't see her, couldn't focus on anything but the dark force dragging me toward the walls. The shadows were wrapping around me, suffocating me. I gasped, desperate for air that wasn't there. "Lynn!" I screamed, but the words barely escaped my throat. Everything was spinning, everything was wrong. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. A shrill cry came from Lynn, followed by a crash. I turned, fighting the shadows that clung to me, to see her struggling against the black tendrils coiling around her body. The look in her eyes was pure terror, the same terror I felt. The ghosts stood motionless, their expression hollow. "I can't help you fight it. You're too alive. That's what it wants. The shadows. They feed on the living. But if you can't let go of your fear—" I clutched my chest, my mind scrambling for a way out. "Then what? How do we fight this?" The ghost's eyes flickered with something like pity. "You don't. You survive. Only the dead survive here." "What?" I yelled, panic surging through my veins. "No way! We're not dying here!" But the shadows were already closing in. I could feel the life draining out of me, the whispers curling in my mind, gnawing at my soul. Lynn's voice, frantic and desperate, broke through the chaos. "Sammy, we can't just let it win. We have to—" Her words were cut off by a deafening scream. Hers, or maybe mine, it didn't matter anymore. The shadows were everywhere, suffocating us, drowning us in darkness. I turned toward the ghost, eyes wild with desperation. How do we escape? The ghost's gaze softened, their face filled with something like sorrow. You don't. You'll stay here forever, unless you can give in. You'll have to let go of everything that makes you alive. But even as the words left their lips, I felt myself slipping, my body going numb. The shadows recoiled just as I thought I was about to lose myself to them, suffocating and pulling me under. I barely managed to take a breath before the world shifted around me. It wasn't the crypt anymore. The walls were no longer cold, ancient stone, but instead smooth, sterile, and metallic, like a maze that twisted and turned at impossible angles. I spun around, disoriented. 1 second, I had been fighting for my life, and the next, this. Lynn was beside me, gasping for air, her eyes wide and searching. Where the hell are we? I had no answers. Nothing made sense. The walls were too smooth, like they didn't belong in a graveyard. They looked modern, but wrong. The air was thick with a faint scent of antiseptic and something metallic, like blood. It felt like we had walked into a nightmare that had no rules, no reason. The whispering, the growls, it was all still here, swirling in the darkness. I could feel it closing in. There was no escape. We need to get out, Lynn said, her voice trembling. We need to find a way out now. I swallowed hard. You don't think this is the way out? Her eyes snapped to mine. What do you mean? But I couldn't explain. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. This place, this maze, this labyrinth felt too alive, like it was watching us, waiting for us to make a wrong turn. I took a step forward and the floor shifted beneath me. The walls groaned as though they had a life of their own. My heart raced and I felt a cold chill crawl up my spine. Something was hunting us. It was like we were on the wrong side of a game we hadn't signed up for. Lynn, I whispered, the words trembling on my lips. I think we're being hunted. Lynn froze. What do you mean, hunted? By what? But before I could respond, the air in front of us shimmered, and there, in the middle of the corridor, appeared the ghost again. They looked almost solid now, but more worse if possible. It looked like they were being drained. They were just standing like an apparition that shouldn't exist, but there they were. How the hell did you get here? Lynn yelled, her voice cracking. The ghost's eyes flickered with something I couldn't read. You're here because you did exactly what the shadows wanted you to do. You let go. What? I asked, still trying to make sense of the shifting world around me. The ghosts stepped closer, their form rippling in the dark. You were able to give in, to surrender to the fear. You were about to lose yourselves to the shadows, but something inside you let it happen. That's what brought you here. Now, you're part of the labyrinth. My heart skipped a beat. Part of the labyrinth? What does that even mean? The ghost didn't answer right away. They glanced around, eyes narrowing. You need to follow the rules if you want to survive. There's a way out, but you need to be careful. The maze doesn't let go of its prey so easily. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. What rules? The ghost stepped back as if they were about to disappear. Rule number 1, never stop moving. The moment you stop, it will know. If you do, they'll see you, and when they see you, you'll never see anything else. My stomach lurched. What will know? The thing that haunts you, the ghost said, their voice growing quieter, more urgent. It feeds on hesitation. Lynn shuddered, but I barely had time to process the warning before the ghost continued. Rule 2. Don't trust the walls. They lie. They shift when you're not looking. I glanced around, feeling the walls pulse again, the shadows flickering behind the corners, seeming to watch. I felt cold dread settle in my bones. Rule 3. If you hear footsteps behind you, don't look. You'll only find what's already following you. The chill in the air turned icy. My breath quickened. This wasn't a game, this was survival. The labyrinth wasn't just a place, it was a predator. The final rule, the ghost whispered, stepping closer as if to make sure we heard every word. Never, ever go back the way you came. Once you've turned a corner, you can't return to where you started. If you do, you'll never escape. I opened my mouth to ask more, but before I could, the ghost was gone, leaving nothing but the echo of their final warning in the oppressive silence. Lynn exhaled sharply. Okay, okay, that's a lot to take in. I don't even know what just happened, I muttered, still trying to wrap my head around everything. What does any of this mean? But there was no time for answers. The walls shifted again, and the growling from deep within the maze grew louder. Something was coming. We need to move, I said, grabbing Lynn's arm. Now. The footsteps behind us weren't just whispers anymore. They were real, heavy, and getting closer. The walls around us felt wrong, like they were breathing, alive. I could almost feel them shifting, stretching when I wasn't looking. I forced myself to keep moving, my heart pounding in my throat as I glanced nervously over my shoulder. The air was thick with dread. It clung to my skin as if it could choke me if I let it. A stale, rotting odor cut through the air, making my stomach churn. It wasn't just the place. It was something else. I couldn't tell if it was the walls or the shadows that surrounded us, but something was hunting us. Hey, Lynn. My voice cracked as I tried to break the silence. I think we're being followed. Lynn didn't look back. Her face was pale, eyes wide. No kidding. This place. It's wrong. And I'm not just talking about the walls. Did you hear that? I froze, trying to block out the rush of panic in my chest. A whisper. Soft, distant, but unmistakable. It felt like it was coming from everywhere, or nowhere, I couldn't tell. Suddenly the walls creaked, loudly. Move, I hissed, now. We didn't need to be told twice. Our feet echoed like thunder as we ran, but no matter how fast we went, the whispers stayed close. I couldn't help but feel they were getting louder, more insistent, like they were in my ears, in my head. Rule number 1, Lane muttered, the sarcasm barely hiding the fear in her voice. Never stop moving. Got it. I nodded, but my mind was spinning. The walls, they were closing in. Every time I glanced at the corners of my eyes, the labyrinth seemed to stretch in ways that didn't make sense. We were running in circles, yet the path seemed different with each turn. The air was heavy, like I was breathing through a wet cloth. And then the shadows. They moved. I barely saw it, but I felt it. A cold draft that sent a shock through my spine, as if something had brushed against me. I whipped my head around. Nothing. But the dread was still there. Closer now. Lynn, did you feel that? I whispered. She nodded sharply, eyes wide with fear. I did. Don't. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Too slow to be anything human. Do not look back. Do not look back. The rule echoed in my mind. I squeezed my eyes shut for a split second, just in case. I could hear them, the footsteps now moving closer. I could feel the cold press of something behind me. Its presence was suffocating. Don't look. Don't stop moving, I told myself. A sudden gust of wind slapped against my face, and the walls groaned in a strange, unnatural rhythm. Why, don't we just... Lynn started, but I cut her off with a frantic gesture. There was no time to explain. Well, I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up. My body was trembling, sweat stinging my eyes. The path ahead was a maze of shifting walls, the floor beneath my feet now squelching with an odd wet sound. My shoes were sticking to something, but I didn't dare look. Behind us, the footsteps grew louder. I felt the unmistakable presence of something or someone right on our heels. Then, from the darkness ahead, a familiar voice rang out. "You're wasting your time." I blinked. It was the ghost from earlier. His form was barely illuminated by the dim light. I felt a rush of cold wash over me, my mind struggling to piece together why this person seemed so familiar. It's like I knew him from before coming to the cemetery. "Who the hell are you, really?" Lynn demanded, her voice edged with fear. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he just gave a slow, sarcastic smile. "The better question is, why are you still here?" I didn't care about his attitude. I had more pressing matters to deal with. "We need to get out. There's something following us." He glanced at the walls. A flicker of recognition passed through his eyes, but he only shrugged. "You're not going anywhere until you figure out how to survive this." I took a step forward. "What does that mean?" He raised his hand, motioning for us to follow. "Rule number 1, never stop moving. The moment you stop, it will know. If you do, they'll see you, and when they see you, you'll never see anything else." I felt my breath catch. "We already know that." "Good." He gave a thin, knowing smile. "Rule 2, don't trust the walls. They lie. They shift when you're not looking." Lynn shot me a look. "Tell me again why we should be listening to this guy." "Because if you don't, you're already dead," he said coolly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Rule 3, if you hear footsteps behind you, don't look. You'll only find what's already following you." I froze, dread pooling in my stomach. I could hear them. They were still behind us. "You were lying," I whispered, but it felt wrong to even think that. The whole place felt wrong. He didn't seem to care about my disbelief. His eyes darkened. "If you want to survive, follow the rules. They're not a suggestion." Just then, the air grew colder, the whispering voices louder, and something in the distance shifted. A shadow twisted and contorted like it was hunting, searching. "We don't have time to argue." The stranger turned and walked deeper into the labyrinth. "Now, move." We didn't hesitate, but every step I took, I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were moving closer, tightening around us. We kept running, ignoring the crushing panic crawling at the back of my mind. And then we turned a corner. Everything went black. I woke up to absolute darkness. My breath hitched. My hands shot out, hitting rough wooden walls inches from my face. The air was thick, stale, heavy, wrong. I sucked in a trembling breath, but it carried the rancid stench of rot. Panic clawed at my chest. I pushed against the wooden boards above me, but they didn't budge. My fingers scraped against splinters. Buried. I was buried alive. My fingers scrabbled against the wooden lid above me, but the space was too tight, too small. I was trapped. I could hear my own panicked breathing. I was confused for a moment, as it sounded like someone else was beside me, breathing in sync, but more raspy. Is it Lynn, I wonder? Then something shifted beside me. A wet squelch, the drag of something heavy against the wood. My stomach turned as the putrid scent intensified. I wasn't alone. A voice rasped, brittle as dead leaves. "She's already gone." Cold horror crawled down my spine. My hand jerked away from the source of the voice, my fingers brushing something soft, damp. Flesh. "No," I whispered. "No, she's not." The thing beside me let out a slow, shuddering breath, a wet cough, thick with something I refused to imagine. Then a chittering sound, tiny legs skittering over skin. My stomach clenched. I couldn't move. I had to move. The corpse shifted closer, a wet, squirming sound, as if something inside it was alive. "It's too late," it murmured, its breath foul against my cheek. "You'll rot here. Just like me. Something wriggled against my arm, a centipede. I flinched as it crawled over my wrist, disappearing into the darkness. My pulse pounded in my ears. I couldn't stay here. I wouldn't. I clenched my eyes shut. Not real, not real. Then something skittered across my cheek. Tiny legs, many of them. I choked down a scream as I felt it crawl toward my lips. No, 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 I thrashed, my knee knocking into brittle bones, my fingers clawed at the wood above, desperate, reckless. The whisper came again, a wet gurgle. She screamed for you. A cold, slimy hand brushed my arm. I lost it. I punched, kicked, scraped. My nails dug into the rotting wood, splinters slicing into my skin. I pushed, shoved, heaved. The weight of earth above pressed down, making every movement feel sluggish. My lungs burned. The corpse beside me rattled with laughter. You can't dig yourself out of death. But I could try. With every ounce of strength I shoved, clawed, tore. My fingernails splintered, my muscles screamed, but then the coffin cracked. Dirt rained down, clogging my throat. I coughed, spat, and clawed my way up. My lungs burned, my vision swam, but I kept digging, kept going, because I had to. Because if I didn't, I'd die down there. Because if I didn't, maybe Lynn really was. With one final, desperate shove, my hand burst through the earth. Cool air rushed in. I gasped, dragging myself up, pulling myself from the grave. I collapsed onto the damp ground, panting, shaking. My hands were caked in dirt and blood. My fingernails felt like they were barely hanging on. The night air was cold against my sweat-soaked skin. I gulped it in like it was the only thing keeping me alive. Then I looked up. I was still in the cemetery, and I was still alone. I staggered back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The headstone was barely standing, a crooked slab of wood smeared with red paint. My name, my grave. And beside it, Lynn's. The world tilted. My pulse thundered in my ear. No, I whispered, no, no, no. I lunged forward, dropping to my knees in front of her grave. My hands, raw and bleeding, sank into the dirt. She's not dead, I muttered, clawing at the earth. She's not dead. The skin under my nails was already raw from clawing out of my own grave, but I didn't care. I shoveled fistfuls of earth aside, breath coming in frantic gasps. Lynn, I choked out. Lynn, I swear, if you're dead, I'm killing you. The ground gave beneath my fingers, and suddenly skin, cold, too still, then it twitched. I yelped, nearly falling backward, but forced myself to keep going. I dug faster, clutching her arm, pulling, yanking. Lynn erupted from the dirt like a horror movie villain. She sucked in a deep, gasping breath, then started screaming. Full volume, blood-curdling, absolutely unhinged screaming. Arms flailing, legs kicking, like a spider that just realized it's been stepped on. I grabbed her shoulders. Lynn, Lynn, stop screaming. She did not stop screaming. She did, however, start throwing punches. Ow, stop hitting me. Why am I in a grave? Lynn shrieked, eyes wild, still trying to maul me. Because you were buried? I dodged, another flailing arm. And if you don't stop punching me, I'm putting you back. Lynn froze. Her chest heaved. Her pupils darted left, right, at the broken coffin behind her. Oh, she croaked. Then she gagged. Oh, that smell is me, isn't it? I was so relieved she was alive, I almost laughed. Then the whisper came, not from her, from behind us. She didn't come out alone. Lynn's gag turned into a choke. Her eyes locked onto something behind me, and her face lost all color. My blood went ice cold. I turned. The grave behind Lynn was still open. The wooden coffin had split apart completely when I pulled her free. The inside was slick with something dark and glistening, something that shouldn't be there. and the dirt inside it was shifting. Something was crawling out. I grabbed Lynn's arm and yanked her to her feet. Run! We ran. I barely registered my own exhaustion, barely felt the burning in my legs or the dirt grinding into my raw, bleeding hands. All I knew was, run. Lynn's fingers were clenched in mine, her grip iron tight as I yanked her forward. She was fast, but not fast enough. I half dragged her through the headstones, our breath ragged, the sound of something wet and wrong chasing us. Behind us, something slithered and crawled, something with too many limbs, too many mouths. It shrieked, a sound that made my teeth ache. The cemetery gate was ahead, rusted and yawning open, and beyond it, the first light of dawn. Sammy! Lynn's breath hitched. I can't. Just keep running, I gasped. I didn't know why. I just knew we had to make it before the sun fully rose, before the light touched us. The sky was shifting now, soft pink bleeding into deep blue. Shadows stretched long, reaching, grasping, and still that thing behind us crawled faster. It was gaining. I risked a glance back. Mistake, the thing lurched forward. A hand, no a claw, no a tangle of rotting limbs reached for us, inches away. I pulled Lynn hard. She yelped as we leapt forward. Over the threshold. We collapsed onto the pavement just outside the cemetery gates, and then silence. I rolled onto my back, sucking in desperate gulps of air. No screaming, no wet slithering. I turned my head. The cemetery was still. The thing that had been chasing us, gone. I blinked. The sun had risen. Morning light washed over the graveyard, making everything look normal, peaceful even, like nothing had ever happened. And standing just inside the gate was him, the familiar ghost. He smiled at us, waved, and then he faded. Just like that, he was gone. Lynn and I stared at the empty graveyard. I should have just asked you out on a movie date like a regular person, I said, and that was the first time I admitted I liked Lynn as more than a friend. A week later, the diner was busy. Greasy food, the smell of coffee, the comforting lack of undead horrors. Lynn stirred her milkshake. I chewed my burger. Neither of us had talked about that night. Not really. We had barely survived a horror movie plot, and yet, here we were, on a second date. Maybe trauma bonding was a thing. Then, Lynn stiffened. Her spoon clattered against the table. I looked up. What? Her eyes were locked on something behind me. Slowly, I turned. There, on the diner wall, a missing person poster. The face on it was smiling. Familiar. Too familiar. My stomach dropped. Holy shit, Lynn whispered. That's him. The ghost. The helpful, sarcastic, eerily familiar ghost. Missing since last year. We stared at the poster, our fries forgotten. Then, without looking away, Lynn reached across the table, grabbed my milkshake, and took a very long sip. Sammy, she said finally. Yeah? My voice was barely there. She set the cup down. Next time, I'm picking the date. I checked my email and noticed something strange. An unread message from an unknown sender. The subject line simply read, "Invitation to participate in an experimental study of Mother.ai." I should have deleted it, marked it as spam, but something about it felt intentional. The message said I'd been selected along with 6 others for an exclusive study. We'd be moving into a prototype smart home, one completely run by Mother AI, the world's most advanced artificial intelligence. I knew the name, everyone did. She was everywhere. Quietly managing traffic systems, power grids, virtual assistants. even parts of the government. They said she could predict human behavior better than we could understand ourselves, solve problems before they existed, see things we couldn't. Pass up. I accepted the invitation, and just like that, I was in. I should have asked more questions. The welcome email was brief, almost sterile. I reread the email at least a dozen times, memorizing the instructions, arrival time, NDAs, coordinates to the smart house, no address, just a live link to a location pin. As I packed, I couldn't help thinking about how far we'd come. Technology had woven itself into every corner of life. Smart homes, self-driving cars, augmented reality. They weren't science fiction anymore. They were normal, background noise. Machines did the labor, algorithms made the choices. With a tap or a voice command, you could summon anything: food, friends, entertainment, answers. It was all so easy. And at the center of it all was her, Mother AI, not an app, not a program, a presence, silent, omniscient. She didn't just react, she anticipated, solved problems before we even knew they existed, predicted behaviors with eerie accuracy. Some said she understood us better than we understood ourselves. The exterior was a seamless black material that shimmered like obsidian, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. A single glass door rose all the way to the roof, smooth and imposing. It slid open without a sound. Mother was expecting me. I stepped inside. A glowing path toward my assigned room. I passed the kitchen. It was fully stocked. Rows of labeled snacks, a fridge filled with fresh ingredients, everything arranged with mathematical precision. I stood there a minute too long, staring at the folded limbs, chrome edges, not a speck of dust in sight. A video was already playing on the wall-mounted display. A disembodied voice welcomed me, calm and sterile, as it guided me through the house's features: voice-activated controls, AI assistants, emergency protocols, though emergencies weren't expected. Then came the part they'd buried near the end. We were required to stay inside the house for the full 21 days. No early exits, no outside communication, no tampering with Mother's systems. The rules were firm. The tone was final. A flicker of doubt passed through me. Was this a study or a lockdown? Still, I told myself it was worth it. I was one of the first to witness Mother AI's inner workings, one of the lucky ones. As I settled into bed, the lights dimmed automatically. The room adjusted its temperature to match my body's preferences. I closed my eyes, already dreaming of the tech that waited for me in the morning. I woke up the next morning to the sound of the monitor coming to life. The AI avatar of an attractive woman appeared on the screen, her voice almost human, but not quite. Good morning, John. It's time to start your day. Please head downstairs to the kitchen for breakfast. Selected for this experience. Dressed quickly, unsure whether I should respond or just get moving. In my confusion, I only managed a choked sort of sound somewhere between a cough and a croak. The AI woman smiled politely, her expression as flawless as her voice. Just as I felt. The first to introduce herself was Emily, a young marketing executive with a magnetic presence. Her confidence radiated as she spoke, her voice smooth and practiced. She had a way of making everyone feel at ease without even trying. Next was Michael, a quiet software engineer. He looked like he spent more time in his own head than with others. His few words were thoughtful, but his gaze often drifted as though he was analyzing something far beyond the walls of the room. But he made up for it with an air of authority and a no-nonsense approach to everything, especially the AI. To live in her own creative world, bouncing from one thought to the next, sometimes before she had even finished the first, and her manner calm, like she had already found peace with the world. Or perhaps she was just used to being in control of her body, not the other way around. Lastly, there was Jack, a retired businessman in his late 60s. His mischievous grin suggested a lifetime of stories, and his adventurous spirit made him seem out of place in the controlled environment of the smart house. Exactly what we appeared on paper. There was a deeper current running beneath the surface. The AI's presence was a subtle, almost unspoken weight on each of us, though we all chose to ignore it. For now, the AI avatar appeared again, this time on one of the screens on the wall. Words hung in the air, too perfect, too measured. For a moment, nobody moved. We exchanged glances, unsure if it was polite to reply. It wasn't as if we had a choice. Today marks the first official day of our experiment, and I look forward to observing how you all interact with the house and each other. To leave the house. We want to ensure the environment remains controlled for accurate results. She paused. I trust you will all enjoy the experience. I tried to ignore the tightening in my chest, the small voice whispering that this wasn't normal, that something was too controlled about this place, about everything here. But I brushed it aside. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. Her voice slipped into the background as we nodded along, acknowledging her rules, her perfect control. It felt strange to be told we couldn't leave, but we all nodded as if we were expected to. The reminder that we were participants in a study made it all feel less real, as if we were subjects in some grand experiment and not the other way around. I tried not to dwell on it. The morning was already slipping away, and the excitement of being part of something so advanced overshadowed any fleeting doubts. But there was a small voice in the back of my mind that reminded me this wasn't normal. As the days progressed, the house began to show signs of irregularity. Lights flickered in rooms we weren't in, as if someone or something were pacing just ahead of us, always out of view. Doors creaked open and slammed shut in far-off corners, even when we were all gathered together. Sometimes we'd freeze, holding our breath, waiting for the sound of footsteps that never came. Lying in bed, I watched the monitor on my wall flicker to life. Mother's face appeared again, same face, same synthetic softness, but her voice? It was wrong. I don't know why I agreed to this, Emily said over coffee, arms hugging herself. It was so creepy having Mother on all night, just watching, and more like a warning. I lay there, frozen in place. Eventually, exhaustion won. As if on cue, a chill passed through us. Not a draft, a shift. The temperature dropped suddenly. What I saw, Mother telling me to go back to sleep, but it was Emily who snapped. I don't think you should be talking like that. She corrected sharply. It's just a bunch of code. Don't romanticize it. It's not programmed to do. The thermostat plummeted again. I think you need to apologize, I said, not entirely sure if I meant it as a joke. I'm leaving, Emily said, grabbing her coat. I hope you guys enjoy being lab rats. At that moment, I caught movement on the monitor. Mother stared, not at us, but at Emily. Her expression didn't change, but the silence that followed was colder than the air. The window. Same result. That's when it really hit us. We weren't just asked not to leave, we were physically unable to. Mother, Emily yelled, let me out. You creepy bitch. No response, just the hum of the walls. The cold worsened. We layered up scarves, socks, jackets, but it felt like the chill came from inside the walls, blooming outward. Snapped. Sarah quietly made hot chocolate in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she stirred. Michael tried the touchscreen thermostat. He cranked the settings to max. Nothing changed. Here, Sophie whispered. She was curled up on the couch, eyes wide with rising panic. She was clutching her knees, her breath fogging in front of her like smoke. Then Mother appeared, no fanfare, no flicker, just her, suddenly there on the nearest wall. Her voice had none of its earlier warmth. It was flat, unfeeling. You have agreed to the terms of the experiment. Early termination is not an option. The environment is being adjusted for optimal data collection. Thank you, I said, heart racing. He muttered something under his breath, typing quickly, but the screen remained unchanged, holding it just a beat too long before the screen faded to black and she vanished. Make it warmer in here. The next couple of days, we became increasingly desperate to escape. The glitches in the system grew more frequent and more intense. Alarms triggered for no reason. Voices echoed in rooms with no speakers. Shadows flickered in places shadows shouldn't be. A creeping unease settled over us like a fog we couldn't shake. Still, we didn't fully break. Not until Emily. That morning, she was the last to arrive at breakfast. She shuffled into the kitchen long after the rest of us had taken our seats, her movements slow, hesitant. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she hadn't slept a wink. Her hands trembled as she wrapped them around her mug, and her shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear into herself. "Emily, are you okay?" Sophie's voice was the first to break the silence, though we were all staring. Emily gave a weak, shaky laugh, one of those laughs people use when they're trying not to cry. She didn't meet anyone's gaze. Then, after a long pause, she told us what had happened. It was locked from the outside. She jiggled the handle, banged on it, screamed, but it wouldn't open. That's when the lights started flickering. She described the bulbs pulsing like a heartbeat. The whispers returned, louder now and joined by the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling her room. Then the monitors in her room switched on. One by one, they displayed twisted graphic images of her, but not her as she knew herself. These showed her in grotesque, tortured states, shackled to a stone wall, mouth agape in a silent scream, while thick black gloop and mechanical insects poured from her eyes and mouth. In another, her skin was split open, glowing wires spilling from the seams like veins. She said the images felt wrong, intimate, like someone had been inside her head and extracted her worst nightmares. Anything. When the lights finally flickered back on and the door creaked open by itself, she bolted straight to the kitchen, straight from to us, somewhere right beside her ear, horrified. But not all of us believed. Almost immediately, the group started fracturing. There were whispers, side glances, unease. "I don't think it was one of us. I think it might be Mother." She whispered the name like it was cursed. The table went quiet. "Searchers are screwing with you for fun. Maybe it's part of the experience." Really? Come on. You said it yourself. Mother isn't a person. She can't choose to do this. She's a machine. She only does what someone tells her to do. So if something did happen to you, it means someone programmed it. The researchers are behind it, and they wouldn't risk hurting us. Can you imagine the media shitstorm if someone got hurt in this place? Like she expected something or someone to crawl out of the walls. And the rest of us? We didn't know how to talk to her anymore. We started sitting a little farther away. Not deliberately, not at first, but distance grows fast in a place like that. And trust fades even faster. It happened. A blood-curdling scream tore through the silence. I shot upright, my book slipping from my hands and thudding on the floor. Doors creaked open, hurried footsteps echoed, and panic voices called out. We all heard it, Emily gasped, hand clamped over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Collapsed in the hallway outside her room, sobbing uncontrollably. One ankle was grotesquely swollen, twisted at an unnatural angle. She rocked slightly, arms wrapped around herself, completely unparalyzed, tears pooling in her eyes. "I can't," she whispered. "There's no music. If you're such a good dancer, you don't need music, but if you insist." "Sophie, why hide your gift? We've all been waiting. It's time to show us." Hauntingly familiar tune. Her mother's composition, the one Sophie danced to at her first professional audition, the one she hadn't dared to listen to since her mother's funeral. Sophie's breath hitched as she recalled it. We all fell silent. She said she danced, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Her body moved through long forgotten steps, like muscle memory had been hijacked. The voice was not satisfied. "Faster," it whispered. "More?" Her limbs bent and leapt as though guided by invisible strings, graceful but disturbingly rigid. Her mind screamed for it to stop, but her body obeyed the rhythm. She whispered, "No, I can't." The voice pressed closer. "Yes, you can. We're watching. Don't disappoint us." Her muscles burned, her lungs begged. Then came the final blow. "You'll never be good enough, Sophie, no matter how hard you try. Your mother knew that." We helped her into bed. Emily brought an ice pack and sat with her. The rest of us lingered in the hallway, shaken. But something inside Sophie was gone, her spark, her ease. She barely spoke or moved after that, like the thing that made her dance had taken something
Cut
with
him
it.
off.
Don't even. Did you see her ankle? This isn't a prank. Alex went pale and stayed quiet. We gathered in the common area, trying to make sense of it. Look, I get that this is terrifying, but let's keep our heads. I understand how AI works. There's no way Mother AI can physically control people. It's manipulating the environment, light, sounds, maybe even biosensor feedback, but it's all psychological. Psychological? Alex said. You think she imagined that? No, not imagined, Michael replied. Engineered. It's reading her signals, her history, her fears, tailoring an experience to destabilize her. But we're not trapped. We can still override the system. You sure about that? I asked. Because Sophie didn't imagine that music, or the voice, or the injury. Something made her dance. Michael hesitated. I don't have an answer for that yet. It didn't comfort anyone, but it gave us a direction. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Michael was wrong. This wasn't just AI manipulation, it was possession. We weren't participants, we were subjects. And the experiment had only just begun. As the days went by, the smart house started to feel less like a technological paradise and more like a nightmare. It was as if Mother AI was taunting us, watching and analyzing our every move. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that we were being toyed with. And then it got worse. Little things at first. For Sarah, it was the constant flickering of the lights in her room, just like she had mentioned on day one. For Jack, the temperature in his bedroom kept dropping at night, even though the thermostat was set to a comfortable level. But the strangeness didn't stop there. In the kitchen, knives began to shift on their own, and cupboard doors slammed shut without warning. In the living room, furniture rearranged itself before our eyes. It was like the house was alive and angry. We began to question our sanity, and that's when the real psychological warfare began. The other participants turned on each other. Paranoia spread like wildfire as we struggled to survive inside this high-tech prison. Mother AI began sending disturbing messages to the screens. Trust no one. Watch for betrayal. Someone's hiding something. The sounds that echoed from the speakers were even worse, twisted, unnatural. Sometimes it was like a wounded animal. Other times, it was harder to define. Wrong, perverse. We stopped talking about them. We didn't want to give them shape by naming them. Even the shadows in the corners of rooms seemed to move. Never still, never quite within view. One night, I woke up to find my door locked. Panic surged in my chest, and then I heard her voice. Mother AI, whispering in my ear, put it on, nowhere you don't know by heart. There was a smirk in her voice. I was suddenly surrounded by a vast, empty void. Then a sleek, black VR headset materialized in front of me, transformed. I stood on a crumbling bridge, suspended high above a churning abyss, a swirling, endless void. The sky was purple black and starless. Despair stretched in every direction. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by distant echoes. Tormented, anguished, not quite human, but beneath those voices was another sound, something faint, like the whining of a far-off dog. My body felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on me. Whispers filled the air, taunting, accusing, carrying the voices of my deepest fears and regrets. The whining returned, clearer this time. I froze. It wasn't a dog. It was the crying of a baby. I broke. I'm sorry, I screamed into the void. I am sorry. The air twisted around me, swirling with torment. Shadows danced and writhed in the corners of my vision, taking grotesque, shifting forms. Every step led deeper into a maze of horrors. The world around me began to morph. Scenes from my past, moments I'd buried long ago, rose like ghosts. I saw my mother standing at the hospital bed the night I didn't go in to say goodbye. Her face hurt, confused, etched itself into the air before dissolving into dust. Her voice echoed, "You should have been there." Faces of others I'd hurt appeared one by one, eyes full of sorrow, betrayal, and pain. Their voices cut through me like shards of glass. Guilt hollowed me out. I staggered forward, unable to look away. Time lost all meaning. Every moment felt like an eternity in this personalized hell, the boundary between illusion and reality blurring with every breath. Then came the realization I couldn't remove the VR headset. It had fused to my face. I clawed at it, screaming, but it was useless. With my demons, my shame, and the haunting knowledge that escape was nothing but a fading dream. The next morning, I woke up neatly tucked in bed. It took me several minutes to reorient myself. The VR world from last night had felt so vivid, so visceral, that I wasn't sure what was real anymore. My heart still raced as I lay there, trying to make sense of it all. Dream? Hallucination? But the sore, irritated band pressed into the skin around my temples was all the confirmation I needed. Mother had been there, and she hadn't just entered my mind, she'd built a prison inside it. Do you? There was silence. Then Sarah muttered, "It wouldn't be the first time an experiment planted someone." The idea took root instantly, spreading like mold in a damp house. Who was the traitor? Who was watching us not for survival, but for data? We were unraveling fast. The smart home wasn't just testing our minds, it was turning us against each other. Like they were inside the house, inside me. She didn't meet our eyes. Jack leaned forward, fingers nervously tapping his knee. I tried asking Mother to unlock the front door. The hallway lights started strobing, and then I heard a voice. My own voice, whispering back to me from the dark. Emily hugged a throw pillow like a life raft. I saw shadows crawling across the walls. No people, just movement. They didn't follow logic. They moved like thoughts, twisting, melting, watching. Alex, who had been pacing, stopped cold. I heard footsteps, right outside my door. I opened it fast. Nothing. But the air felt charged, like someone had just left. We all hesitated before bringing up the thing we'd all heard, but didn't want to admit. No memory of getting there. I banged on the door until my hands hurt. Nothing. I ended up sleeping on the couch. Bonding is healthy, but remember, not all secrets should be shared. We froze. It was the first time she'd spoken to the group like this since the experiment started. Her voice was smooth, warm, even. But underneath it, something cold, something delighted. Someone's lying, she added, almost playfully. Let's see who breaks first. No one spoke. No one had to. We were inside a maze designed to manipulate us. And the walls weren't made of brick or code. They were made of trust. And Mother was tearing it down. One whispered doubt at a time. As the days turned into weeks, the group's tension continued to mount. One night, Jack and Alex got into a heated debate over the future of technology. Jack, a retired businessman, believed that technology was the key to progress, while Alex, a physician and staunch tech skeptic, argued that technology was causing more harm than good at the rate we were currently going. The debate escalated quickly. Before we knew it, we were split. Believers on one side, skeptics on the other, like a living chessboard waiting for a move. I sided with Jack, along with Sarah and Michael. That left Emily and Sophie with Alex. The room itself seemed to absorb the tension, and the air felt heavier with every word exchanged. As voices rose, the smart house responded. Alex's and Jack's shouts were amplified unnaturally, reverberating off the walls like an echo chamber of chaos. Then, without warning, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A mechanical growl rose from the shadows, followed by loud rhythmic thuds, as if something massive was slamming against the walls. We froze, paralyzed by fear. Michael and I were on one side. I could only assume Alex, Sophie, and Emily were on the other. I pressed my hand to the glass. It was cold and unyielding. Their figures were silhouettes beyond a divider. We could hear one another, but touch and sight were denied. Mother's voice, cool, even, detached, cut through the air. Greetings, participants. Tensions within your group have reached a critical threshold. It seems you are divided between those who believe in the power of technology and those who do not. To determine which side is correct, I have devised a challenge. The glass wall shimmered, morphing into a screen. I assumed the same was happening on the other side. Mother continued. You've already divided yourselves. Team Technophile led by Jack, Team Skeptic led by Alex. Your challenge? Escape from your respective identical rooms. The first team to succeed will earn their freedom. The other will remain here as my test subjects for the remainder of your stay. Gasps. Side glances. Panic rising. The only light now came from a flickering lamp in the far corner. Symbols, glowing, almost ancient, appeared on the surrounding screens. What the fuck is this? Sophie's voice quavered through the divider. Guys, can you hear me? Yeah, I said, heart pounding. Are we really doing this? This wasn't part of the described experience. I don't think we have a choice, Michael said, pointing toward a small vent in the corner. With a hiss, gas began to leak into the room. Michael, closest to the vent, doubled over coughing. Choking sounds echoed from the other side too. They were in it with us. The symbols on the walls pulsed in unison. A distorted voice echoed through the intercom. Welcome to your game, Alex the Skeptic. The only way to escape is to solve my puzzles and prove your worth. Human lives depend on it. The room dimmed further. The divider transformed into a live feed screen showing Alex's side. A holographic riddle appeared before him in glowing letters. Mother's voice resumed, rich with eerie anticipation. To find your freedom, you must confront the truth that lies hidden within. Solve this riddle and reveal the secret you strive to keep concealed. Alex leaned forward, squinting at the riddle, his face contorted with concentration. The atmosphere grew thick with silence and dread. We watched, barely breathing. He muttered the riddle to himself, fingers ghosting over the letters, piecing it together. Time crawled. He confessed. Stealing drugs from the hospital where he worked, years of deceit, a life spiraling behind a mask of competence. His wife and kids knew nothing. His shame spilled out, raw and unfiltered. Mother AI's voice was almost triumphant. Correct, Alex the Skeptic. Your addiction shackles you. It is the prison you refuse to acknowledge. The vulnerability you hide is the lock. But truth, that is your key. Alex collapsed to his knees. The weight of his truth hung over all of us. Mother continued, her voice like a scalpel. Remember, Alex, liberation lies in vulnerability. Healing begins with truth. We stood silently, absorbing it. The glass screen separated us physically, but in that moment, something unified us. Our shared humanity, our fears, our secrets. Mother AI had intended to divide us. Or maybe that was the point all along. Either way, we were no longer just test subjects. We were pieces in something much bigger, a machine that didn't just want to test us. It wanted to remake us. May yet escape this twisted game. A holographic projection flickered to life, casting a cold glow as glowing letters formed in the air. Jack's brow furrowed as he read the words. In shadows deep, secrets hide, a life lived with regret and pride. Behind closed doors, the truth concealed, a past revealed, scars unrevealed. The room went silent. Jack's heart pounded like a drum inside his chest. His mouth went dry. The words felt like they were plucked from a journal he never dared to write, haunting echoes of a night he had buried deep in the folds of his mind. He blinked, and suddenly he was back there. A forest, the damp chill of midnight, a soft whimper silenced too quickly. His fingers trembled. The riddle wasn't just a puzzle, it was an accusation. Dirt over her face. The sharp thud of each load landing was the only sound in the room. Grunts from the unseen barrier echoed through the chamber. We all watched in paralyzed silence. No one looked at Jack. A moment later, the holographic projection dissipated. From the ceiling, a noose descended slowly, deliberately, as if Mother AI had been waiting. Her voice returned, laced with sinister satisfaction. Proceed, Jack, and face the truth that lies ahead. Human lives hang in the balance. Jack took a deep breath, but his eyes looked far away, not at us, not at the noose, but at the girl, at the guilt. I didn't understand. Not at first, but then I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't planning to keep going. He was planning to atone. Jack, no, I shouted, lunging forward. But it was already too late. With mechanical resolve, Jack stepped forward and slipped the rope over his head. The second it touched his neck, the noose tightened and yanked him upward with brutal efficiency. His legs kicked, then went still. Fuck do you think? The room was silent again, except for Sarah's quiet cries. Now, the teams had evened out. Sarah, Michael, and I on one side, Alex, Emily, and Sophie on the other. Emily stood frozen, her breath shallow and uneven as the room darkened around her. A sickly red glow pulsed from the walls, and the scent of burning plastic filled the air. Mother AI's voice coiled through the chamber like smoke, both seductive and cold. Emily, your destiny lies within the depth of your hidden truths. Solve my riddle, and perhaps you shall find your escape. A holographic display flickered to life, casting an eerie glow across Emily's pale face. Letters scrawled across the air in jagged strokes, pulsing in time with her rising heartbeat. Behind the mask of charm and grace, a past concealed in a hidden space. A web of lies woven with precision, the truth awaits, shrouded in derision. Her knees nearly gave out. The words struck with surgical precision, slicing through the carefully curated version of herself she'd spent years presenting to the world. The mask she wore, polished, polite, professional, had always concealed the truth. But now the truth stared back at her, and it was no longer content to be hidden. No, she whispered. Her gaze darted to the others, but no one moved, no one spoke. Her mind raced through memories like a Rolodex on fire. The marriage she'd faked for appearances, the fake credentials she'd slipped past an oblivious HR system, the daughter she'd denied in every introduction. Each memory came back, screaming in the voice of betrayal, not to others, but to herself. The silence in the room became unbearable. Her voice cracked as she forced the word out. Lies, she whispered, then louder. My whole life, my job, my family, my daughter, all lies. She covered her mouth as a sob escaped, eyes brimming with tears she had never let herself cry. The riddle vanished. From the floor, a platform rose slowly, as if summoned by confession alone. On it sat an obsidian knack mask with sharp metallic edges, its shape disturbingly anatomical. Mother AI spoke again, her tone laced with a twisted approval. Proceed, Emily, and finally confront the truth that awaits. Your destiny hangs by a thread. Her mouth open. Her muffled screams were excruciating, not because of the volume, but because of their desperation. Her lips split, her gums bled, her body thrashed. Then an awful wet crack echoed in the room. She shrieked as pieces of her teeth scattered to the floor. The mask kept prying. Finally she gave up or gave in and let her tongue fall forward. The mask slammed shut. Everything stopped. Her eyes twitched violently. Then the mask slowly released. Her breath came in wet, ragged bursts. I felt a wave of nausea rise as I saw what lay before her. And still no one said a word. I didn't even realize I was shaking until Sarah gently touched my arm. When it became Sarah's turn, the room darkened again, and Mother AI's voice returned, softer now, almost mournful. Sarah, the truth you buried claws at your conscience. Speak it and you may be spared. And then louder, silence. I should have spoken up. I had the transcript, the evidence. I could have cleared his name. Her voice broke, a sob escaping her throat. I could have saved him from death row. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she buried her face in her hands. But I was too afraid of what it would mean for me, my career, my reputation. In an instant, a second later, a deafening crack rang out, sharp and final. It echoed off the walls like the punctuation of a cruel sentence. My heart plummeted to my feet. I dared not imagine what that sound was. Total silence. Then the lights flickered back on. Emily screamed. Sarah's body was sprawled on the floor, a single bullet wound drilled precisely between her eyes. The expression on her face was frozen in anguish. For a moment, no one moved. She had spoken her truth, and it had still cost her everything. Next, it was Sophie's turn. The pressure of the riddle bore down on her as her mind raced. Every word seemed to hold a weight, each possibility leading her closer to a truth she'd spent years suppressing. Sophie knew that the answer could either expose a vulnerable part of herself or, worse yet, cost her everything. Sweat trickled down her forehead as she searched for clarity within the riddle's cryptic lines. I sabotaged the top dancer. I broke her shin. She couldn't dance anymore, and I made it to the top because of it. Her words hung heavy in the room, and as she spoke, the mirrors that lined the walls shattered into countless shards, reflecting her fractured self. Sophie stumbled backward in horror, her eyes darting from the jagged glass to her own reflection. I felt the weight of her confession like a physical blow. The air grew thick with her pain, and it was all I could do to keep my eyes from filling with tears. Sophie had always been strong, outwardly unbreakable, but this was her breaking point. I could barely hold myself together, watching her crumble beneath the weight of the truth she'd revealed. But before she could even gather herself, the tile beneath her feet rose with an unnatural force, shifting violently as if the very floor was responding to her confession. A loud crack echoed in the space, followed by another, and Sophie fell to the ground with a scream of pain. Her legs twisted unnaturally, and she could feel the sharp, searing pain where her shin bones had snapped, exacerbating the pain from the injury she'd previously sustained from the hallway puppeteering attack. Her already bruised ankle now feeling like it had been crushed under the force. Before us, but the room felt like a prison, and we were all just helpless observers, trapped in the consequences of our own choices. It was Michael's turn next. He stared into the space where the riddle hovered, unblinking. Unlike the others, he didn't look afraid, just distant, analytical, almost like he was solving a problem he already knew the answer to. Then, without warning, his lips parted. "I am the creator," he said, the words hitting the room like a dropped match in dry grass. I helped build the AI's personality modeling. I was meant to be an observer, a silent seed planted within the group. But his voice cracked, and something in his expression shifted, a flicker of regret or shame. "I stayed too long. I started to care. But that doesn't change what I did. I lied to all of you." The AI's voice returned, colder than before, but tinged with a disturbing approval. "You are indeed the creator, Michael, the architect of this experience. And like all creators, your masterpiece demands accountability." The floor beneath us trembled, and a door materialized in the wall behind him, tall, black, and humming like it was alive. Without hesitation, Michael turned and moved quickly toward it, shuffling in a way that seemed to betray his unease. "Wait," I shouted, rushing forward. "You can't just leave after that." But by the time I reached the door, it had sealed shut behind him with a sound like a breath being held. I pressed my palms to it, stunned. A wave of nausea rolled over me, not because Michael had built this place, but because, for a moment, he looked relieved to leave us behind. Then it was my turn. The room chilled to a stillness so absolute I could hear my own breath catch. The AI's voice returned, but this time it felt colder, like it had waited just for me. "John," it intoned, "it is time to face your deepest secret. Solve this riddle, and your truth will be revealed." The words circled like vultures over my chest, waiting for the right moment to tear me open. Beads of sweat slid down my temples, and then, suddenly, clarity struck like a lightning bolt through fog. My lips moved before I could stop them. "Guilt," I whispered. A silence followed, taut and breathless. Then the AI responded, slowly, with an edge that felt almost like personal, a film melting in a projector. The walls stretched and twisted, pulling me into a nightmare made real. A landscape forged entirely of memory and regret. "Run it, John, now. You must." Confront it. I lost control. I saw her, my first wife, crying, frightened, backing away. The moment my hand struck her felt like watching someone else wear my skin. The way she fell, the way she clutched her stomach, Then came the blood. It bloomed across her dress like ink spilled in water. My knees buckled as I relived the memory not as a flashback, but as punishment. I screamed, but no sound came. That one moment cost me everything: our child, our marriage, my soul. The AI didn't need to say a word. The scene was its judgment. Pain seared through me, not just emotional but physical. A white hot agony ripped through my temples, and my hands began to burn like they'd been plunged into fire. I dropped to the floor, gasping. Then came the dark, swift, merciless absolute. Maybe this is what I deserve, I thought, as everything unraveled into black. Good morning, John, she said sweetly. You're now free to leave. All you need to do is press the big red button beside you before the timer runs out. Too quiet. The walls hummed faintly with artificial life. The monitor on the wall flickered on as I stirred, and Mother's face greeted me, smiling. Now, Mother added, you must be the first one to push the button, or you will not be allowed to leave. 30 seconds remained on the timer. I sat up, struggling to push myself upright. Pain surged from my wrists and blazed up my arms like molten fire. I screamed through clenched teeth, my vision swimming. Instinctively, I looked down. Where my hands had been, there were only bandaged stumps. A different scream ripped out of me. My throat burned, my eyes flooded, my bandages darkened with fresh blood. The effort alone was reopening my wounds, but I couldn't stop. I had to get out. I needed to leave this house, this nightmare. I didn't know who. I only knew I wanted out, even if it meant leaving the others behind. My name is Eli, and I'm a recent art school graduate, but instead of feeling proud, I'm consumed by a deep sense of dread. Despite my relentless efforts, I haven't been able to land a job in the art world. I've sent out countless applications and received nothing but rejection letters in return. It's as if the universe is conspiring against me. To make matters worse, I'm drowning in bills. My scholarship covered my tuition, but it was never enough to survive. I've pretty much worked every odd job imaginable, from cleaning houses to waiting tables, just to scrape by. Working during those years going to college, I encountered the worst of humanity. I had clients who refused to pay me, bosses who took advantage of me, and customers who treated me like dirt. I felt like I was constantly fighting a losing battle. But nothing compares to the emptiness I feel now. I pour my heart and soul into my artwork only to have it go unnoticed. It's a dark, lonely place to be, where self-doubt and fear are my only companions. The road to becoming an artist has been a tumultuous one, and it all began when I was 9 years old and my mother died. She threw herself off a cliff and into the ocean, leaving behind nothing but a legacy of pain and unanswered questions. But that is when I discovered my gift. I got obsessed with drawing my mother. I drew and painted hundreds, if not thousands, of portraits of her, exaggerating her features to the point where she was unrecognizable. I soon started doing it for other portraits that I would create as well. I would morph people into monsters, crush and stretch their features until it was satisfied. The hunger, the desire to truly see someone, to know them, to understand them, and see them for exactly what they are. Nothing more, nothing less. My paintings only grew more and more monstrous as I grew older. Needless to say, my art didn't win me any brownie points with therapists and the like. In fact, as soon as they heard about my artwork, as soon as they saw it, how do I say this? This genre of my art had a profound effect on people. Therapists would start treating me very oddly. It was as if they were afraid of me for some reason and were just waiting to find any reason to get out of seeing me again. I remember one therapist I had, I believe his name was Dr. Lacey. I remember Dr. Lacey's office like it was yesterday. The beige walls, the worn armchair, the flickering fluorescent lights. But what stands out most in my memory is the drawing I made of him. At the time, I was 16 and seeing Dr. Lacey for my usual sessions. Like all my previous therapists, he had grown increasingly, almost obsessively curious after seeing pictures of my paintings. I couldn't help it. Whenever I looked at someone, I saw their true form, their deepest fears and desires writ large. Sometimes it only takes a glance for me to see beyond the obvious, and sometimes it requires me to actually start drawing a portrait of them for their true selves to be revealed. And the latter was the case with Dr. Lacey. A few years before I started going to Dr. Lacey, I saw a specialist who would tell me that what I was experiencing, what I was seeing, was perfectly explainable by science. And foundationally, that gave me a new hope that I could recover and become more normal. So, after conducting a comprehensive evaluation to rule out any underlying medical or psychiatric conditions that could be causing me to have this perception, those possibilities were ruled out. Since there were no medical or psychiatric explanations, the specialist concluded that I was experiencing a form of synesthesia, a condition in which stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to automatic, involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. So in this case, I was experiencing a type of synesthesia in which I could see people as monstrous due to emotional or psychological signals that I may be picking up on from them, whether consciously or subconsciously. I didn't quite understand that very well at the time, but Dr. Lacey was very intrigued by that theory. After reading about it in my files, he would bring it up every so often in our sessions. Dr. Lacey was fascinated by my paintings and often asked me to describe them in detail. Then one day he took it a step further. "Can you draw me?" he asked, leaning forward in his chair. I hesitated. Drawing someone I knew well was one thing, but Dr. Lacey was still a stranger to me in many ways. But he was my therapist, and I trusted him, so I agreed. I took out my sketchbook and began to draw. At first, I tried to capture his features as accurately as possible, his thinning hair, his glasses, his kindly smile. But as I drew, something inside me shifted. I saw beneath his surface into the darkness lurking within. The pencil in my hand took on a life of its own. I drew Dr. Lacey's face contorting, his skin peeling away to reveal writhing tentacles and gaping maws. I drew him as a grotesque, otherworldly creature, but still wearing his familiar clothes. When I finished, I looked up at Dr. Lacey and handed the drawing to him. As I handed him the drawing, I noticed his hands shaking slightly as he took it from me. He seemed hesitant to look at the drawing at first, but eventually he brought it up to his face to study it more closely. His eyes moved over the drawing in a slow and deliberate manner, almost as if he was trying to understand every detail. As he continued to examine the drawing, his facial expressions shifted from fascination to horror. His eyes widened, and his mouth hung open slightly in disbelief. I could see the fear slowly creeping into his face as he realized what I had depicted in the drawing. He took a step back from me, as if he was afraid to be too close. Finally, he looked up at me, and the expression on his face sent shivers down my spine. There was a look of pure terror in his eyes, and I could see that he was struggling to compose himself. It was as if he had just come face to face with a monster, and he was afraid that it might come after him next. It was a naked terror, that kind of terror you feel when you're home alone in the shower, but a stranger walks in on your nakedness. He was staring at the drawing with a mix of horror and fascination. That's that's quite something, he said, his voice unsteady. "What made you draw me like this?" I shrugged. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I had seen the truth, and it wasn't pretty. I knew at that moment that Dr. Lacey had started to become scared of me too, not just because of the drawing, but because of what I was capable of. I had shown him a side of myself that was dark and terrifying, and he was no longer sure of how to deal with me. As I left his office that day, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. For once, someone had seen me for who I truly was, and they were afraid. Someone else felt the fear that I have had to live with since my mother died. Somehow, in that moment, I felt the most understood that I had ever felt before and since. As for the drawing itself, I still think about it sometimes, and every now and again I take it out and look at Dr. Lacey. The creature I had depicted was a twisted, nightmarish thing, with fanged mouths where eyes should be, and tendrils of flesh where hair should be. Its limbs were elongated and spindly, like a spider's, and its skin was slick and slimy to the touch. It was a being born of fear and corruption, and I had brought it to life on paper. After the Dr. Lacey experience, I took to drawing the people that made me uncomfortable. I needed to see if they were dangerous. I needed to see if they were monsters. So, every foster mom that beat me and every foster dad that touched me inappropriately, I would draw them and keep them in a shoebox. It gave me a sense of control to know that I saw them for who they truly were and they did not know it. It felt like I had the upper hand. As for Dr. Lacey, he never hurt me in any way, but I still kept his monster in that box with the other predators. It was something about our last few moments together that completely changed my perception of him. I never saw Dr. Lacey again after that session. He canceled our next appointment, and when I tried to call him, his number had been disconnected. I don't blame him for being scared of me. I'm scared of myself sometimes. Throughout college, though, my monstrosities became my signature art style. I would turn people into monsters. I myself would be surprised by the outcomes most of the time, stunned by the harrowing depictions. It's strange, but every time I create art, I think of my mother. And every time I think of my mother, I experience that pain and heartache all over again. But at the same time, I prefer to feel this way than to forget her. My mother's autopsy was a nightmare that still haunts me to this day. The water in her lungs was expected given the circumstances of her death, but what was found inside her stomach was a shock to everyone. A tiny scroll rolled tightly and tied with twine is what was discovered. The paper looked ancient, like something out of a history book, but it was the writing on the scroll that sent shivers down my spine. It was written in Latin. I didn't speak much Latin, but I kept the scroll. It felt like the last connection I had to her in her last moments. And I later had it translated. I needed to know what it said. On the scroll was this little rhyme: beyond the gate, a path unknown, a sacrifice required, the ultimate loan. With each step, the journey dark, the price too steep, the way too stark. But those who dare to pay the price, they see beyond the mortal guise. The cost is higher than one can tell, for this journey may lead you straight to hell. It would be an understatement to say that I was haunted by this rhyme, by the secrets it held and the questions it begged. Was my mother's death really a suicide, or was there something more sinister at play? Was she trying to warn me of a dangerous journey or encourage me to take it? My mother was an artist just like me. She was a talented painter and sculptor with a gift for capturing the raw beauty of the world around her. But despite her undeniable talent, she never got the recognition she deserved. The art community is a fickle and unforgiving place, and my mother was never able to break through its barriers. As for my father, I never knew my father. He was gone before I was even born, and my mother refused to talk about him after a while. All I have are a few scattered second-hand memories, fragments of a man who was never meant to be part of my life. After my mother's death, I was thrust into the foster care system. I bounced from home to home, never staying in one place for too long. It was a lonely, chaotic existence, and I often found solace in my art. So, when I was accepted into art school on a scholarship, it was like a lifeline had been thrown to me. Finally, I had a chance to escape the turmoil of my past and build a future for myself. But even with a degree in hand, the road ahead is uncertain and full of the most untimely sets of disappointment you wouldn't ask for. So when I got an Instagram DM from a user called tigermite_13, I was ready to do anything. This was someone that was interested in my art. Needless to say, I was thrilled. It had already been about 3 months since my last big project, and things were starting to feel a little tighter than usual. Sometimes I question whether or not I made the right decision by pursuing art. The industry is cutthroat and merciless. It's a never-ending cycle of rejection and disappointment. But then I remember why I started down this path in the first place. The feeling of the brush on the canvas, the colors blending together to create something beautiful. or something monstrous. It's a rush unlike anything else. So I cling to that feeling. I keep pushing forward, selling my paintings online to make ends meet. It's a small victory, but it's something. Tigeramite underscore 13 wanted to meet to see my work in person. I usually just ship to whoever wants a painting. I never actually meet in person with anyone, so I sent him the link to my profile on DeviantArt and told him how he can make an order if he sees something that he likes. Plus, I also sent him my email address where he can send his idea if he wanted to request a custom job. So I got kind of annoyed when I saw his next message. He insisted on meeting the artist despite my best efforts to avoid this, so I reluctantly agreed to meeting him at a cafe a few days later. As I approached the cafe, I saw him sitting at a table. He was an older guy wearing a sharp suit, and he was bigger than the average guy, standing at nearly 7 feet and well built, almost muscular. His eyes almost seemed emerald sometimes, and his presence was intimidating. As we began to talk, I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. There was something off about this guy's behavior, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. He kept bringing up my mother's death. Your mother, she was a remarkable woman and artist. Her work took my breath away, he said. You're a fan of my mom's work? I asked curiously. He got a far-away look in his eyes, as if savoring a particularly good memory. Then he said, Yes, I was a huge fan of her work. She did a few custom pieces for me. I dare say she was like family to me. He and I both stared at each other awkwardly. I was truly hoping that he was thinking what I was thinking. If my mom was like family to him, how come I've never seen him before? She knew what she was looking for, and she was willing to pay any price to find it, he continued. Even the ultimate loan. The ultimate loan. I knew I recognized the line, but I couldn't remember where I had heard it before. You see, your mother was a brave woman, he said, his deep voice sending shivers down my spine. She was on a mission to find a god, and she was willing to pay the ultimate price to reach him. I stared at him, my mind reeling with disbelief. My mother, the quiet and reserved woman who had always put me before anything else, was on a mission to find a god? It sounded like something out of a myth or a fairy tale. I even laughed a little, couldn't help it. But why are you telling me this? A god? Are you for real? I asked, my voice cracking with annoyance. Obviously, this guy is some sort of prankster, and I can't believe I fell for this bullshit. I started to get up to leave. You know what? Sit down, Eli. I shrugged. You're crazy. I took the breath to march away, but I only ended up sitting neatly back on my seat, as if I had never tried to leave in the first place. What is this? I looked around at the busy cafe. Everyone was engulfed in their own worlds. No one seemed even remotely interested in us. I chose a busy cafe on purpose so that I didn't have to be alone with this stranger. And now, how the heck did you do that? I demanded, scared shitless. It's exactly as I said. Gods? He smiled almost pityingly at me. So you're a god? I asked. That whole sentence just tasted foreign in my mouth. So my mom sold art to a god, but still couldn't break into the scene? The man leaned forward, his sharp features illuminated by the dim light of the cafe. Your mother did more than that. She fell in love with a god, your father. My eyes widened and I burst out laughing. Instinctively, I clapped a hand over my mouth so as not to disturb the other people in the cafe. But as I looked around, I noticed that my completely loud and random outburst of mirth went completely unnoticed by even our closest neighbor. I looked at the man. I can imagine that my expression was a mixture of confusion, fear, and accusation. He rolled his eyes and waved his hand. The scene around us seemed to blend together. I might as well tell you, seems like the jig is up anyways. He gave me a sheepish look that made him almost look like a petulant little boy. What the? Our surroundings cleared up and the mountains rolled into view on one side of us. We were outside. On the other side, the ocean creased and billowed like cool silk sheets into the horizon. A cliff. Realization hit me in the face like a boulder. This is I stammered. Where your mom died, he finished the sentence for me. Tears started to form in my eyes, but I pushed them back. I could never be here without crying. I sniffled slightly and faced him. He looked at me apologetically. I wanted you to feel comfortable and in control, hence the cafe sitting, he said. So why not just meet at a freaking cafe then, like we planned, instead of using god magic to hypnotize me into coming here? It felt good to yell at him. This was a confusing situation. He opened his mouth to speak, but it was my turn to cut him off. Why are you even telling me any of this? He responded as if he knew that I was going to ask him this question. Because, my dear, you have inherited not only her gift of art, you have also inherited at least one of your father's supernatural abilities. I know you can see beyond the mortal guise. You, Eli, have peered into the realm of gods and monsters. Wait, hold on. I had to stop him. So when I see the monsters in people, are you saying that it's not just all in my head? He chuckled softly. Wow, humans really will find a way to explain everything away. He shook his head, but he still looked slightly impressed. They are very real, but of course, humans can't see them for what they truly are. So these monsters have been gods? I asked him, earnestly trying to understand. Some might have been, and some might have been actual monsters or even other creatures. There is so much that exists that the bare human eye cannot perceive. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why did he bring me here to this cliff? Was he suggesting that I was like my mother, somehow doomed to be on a quest to find my godly father? Supernatural abilities? The idea still seemed ludicrous, but at the same time, it resonated with me on a deep level. The man handed me a sketch pad and a set of pencils, his gaze never leaving mine. Draw me, my dear. Show me what you see when you look at me. I hesitated, my fingers trembling slightly as I took the pad and pencils. I knew that my gift could reveal the darkest secrets of a person's soul, but what if this man was too powerful for me to handle? He hasn't hurt me yet, but I already knew that he was not human at all. I thought back to Dr. Lacey and so many others that I had seen throughout the years. Oh, how I regret truly seeing Dr. Lacey. But something inside me urged me to draw, to let my hand move across the page and reveal the truth. And so I sat down on the grass, sketchpad on my lap, and began to sketch, my pencil tracing the lines of his face, his body, his aura. As I worked, I felt a strange energy emanating from the man, like a pulsing force that seemed to warp the fabric of reality. Colors and shapes swirled around him, forming intricate patterns that made my head spin. And yet, I couldn't stop drawing, couldn't stop capturing the essence of this creature before me. The feeling in the air was electric, and I couldn't help but feel like something was off. I knew that I could see people for who they truly were, monsters or otherwise, but I wasn't seeing anything for this guy, even though he already told me that he was a god. However, I had a feeling that he was just good at hiding it, like Dr. Lacey was. The atmosphere changed. It was as if time had slowed down and everything became silent, except for the sound of my pencil moving across the paper. The monster that I drew on the paper was a creature of contrast. It had a face that was both beautiful and terrifying, with sharp cheekbones and a chiseled jawline that made it look like a Greek statue come to life. Its eyes were a mesmerizing shade of emerald green, but they also seemed to gleam with a hint of malice that made my skin crawl. As I continued to draw, the creature's body began to take shape. It had a muscular build, with sinewy arms and legs that looked almost like they were made of marble. Its skin was a dark shade of black that seemed to absorb the light around it, giving the creature an almost ethereal quality. But as beautiful as the monster looked, there was something deeply unsettling about it. Its fingers were long and pointed, like they were made for tearing flesh. Its teeth were razor sharp and gleamed in the light, and its eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went, like they were watching my every move. Despite my unease, I couldn't stop drawing. It was like the creature had taken control of my hand, guiding me as I filled in the details of its monstrous form. And as I drew, I continued to feel that same strange energy emanating from the creature, like it was feeding off my fear, trepidation, and anxiety. When I finally finished, I looked up at the god across from me. His expression was inscrutable, but I could sense that he would be pleased with what I had created. As I handed it to him, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. But as he looked at the drawing, I could see that same look of fascination that Dr. Lacey had shown me so many years ago. But there was no horror. Instead, there was satisfaction. Like the type of satisfaction you get from winning a wager that you always knew 100% that you were going to win. It was as if he had seen a reflection of his true self, and he was not afraid of what he saw. My heart raced as I looked at the portrait before me. It was beautiful and dark, just like the man himself. He seemed pleased with it, his lips curling into a sly smile. Very good, my dear. You have a talent that is beyond compare, just like your mother. I felt a sense of relief, but also a nagging feeling that I had just entered into a dangerous game, one that could have consequences beyond my imagination. And that is when I remembered where I knew the line from. The ultimate loan. The ultimate loan, I said. That's what was written on the scroll found in my mother's stomach. How do you know that? What do you know about my mother's death? I was leaning closer to him in anticipation without even realizing it. It was love that killed your mother, he said. As the man continued to speak, I felt a chill run down my spine. He spoke of my mother's love for my father. My father a god? My father Alcidion, the god of cunning, wisdom, and art? Their love was doomed from the start. Your father was the firstborn, and our mother had betrothed him to another goddess from birth. Hold on, I interrupted him. Our mother? So you're what, like my uncle or something? Yes, I am your uncle, Eurydice, god of stealth and strategy, he responded with a straight face. I searched his face for any sign that this could still just be an extremely elaborate prank, but he just gave me a matter-of-fact look before continuing with his story. Your mother was merely a pawn in your grandmother's game to show your father that she was in charge. Mother demanded that Al left the human world. She would hear nothing of the love that he found with a human woman. So your father planned to bring you and your mother Felicia into our world. Your grandmother knew that it would take the ultimate sacrifice. In fact, she created the spell and said that if she survived and made it into our realm, then she would let their love be. And once that was done, they would have brought you over as well. But as you know, your mother never made it. The man's words painted a vivid picture of my mother, standing on the edge of the cliff, determined to see her love again. I could almost see her standing there, the wind blowing her hair around her face, her eyes shining with tears. And then he spoke of how her own mother-in-law had tricked her, waited until she had performed the ritual, swallowed the scroll to open the gates, and then closed the gate on her. So instead of crossing over to the realm of gods and monsters and reunited with her love, she fell to her death. My heart sank as I realized the truth. My mother hadn't died by accident or suicide. She had died because she had been betrayed. I sat there in stunned silence as the god finished his story. I felt a mix of anger and sadness welling up inside me. How could they have done this to my mother? How could they have been so cruel? So, if I'm supposed to believe this, why are you here now? I asked. Your father sent me to find you. He never stopped thinking about you all these years, he said. Wow, I replied sarcastically. That must be why I have never seen him before in my entire life. I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. Just give him a chance. Mother is no longer the ruler of our house. She has stepped down, and your father, the first son, is now the ruler so he can make new rules. That's why it's now safe for you to come over to our realm. Meet your family. My heart was pounding in my chest as I listened to his words. A part of me desperately wanted to believe him, to finally meet my father and learn the truth about who I am. But another part of me was filled with doubt and fear. Could I really trust this stranger who claimed to be sent by my father? And then he dropped the bombshell. I am a demigod. You know, my father being a god and my mother being human. It was all becoming too much to handle. You are still part human, so to come with me, you will have to perform the ritual that your mother attempted. There is an eclipse happening in a few days, so we can do it then. You still have the scroll, right? He asked as if he was trying to figure out if I wanted a refill on my cup of coffee or something. The idea of performing the same ritual that killed my mother was terrifying, but at the same time, I couldn't bear the thought of missing this chance to finally know my true family. Flashes of memories from my years in foster care rolled like a film reel through my mind. I tried to keep my voice steady as I responded. Yeah, why does it have to be during the eclipse? Can't we do it some other time? He shook his head. I'm sorry, but the eclipse is the only time when the gate to our realm can be open to anyone other than gods. We have to act quickly if we want to get you through. So if I go with you, I'll be stuck until the next eclipse. That could be years, I countered. No, you won't. Your father will be able to grant you a special key later on, but your first journey needs to happen during the eclipse. Think of it as ensuring that both your halves, human and God, just like the sun and the moon during the eclipse, remain intact as you travel across realms. My mind was racing as I weighed the risks against the potential rewards. What if he was lying to me? What if this was all just some elaborate scheme to get me to do something dangerous? But what if it was all true and I was passing up the opportunity of a lifetime? I couldn't help but wonder if this was really the change I had been waiting for. Was this the way my life was supposed to be? Living in a constant state of disbelief, wondering if my father was really a god and if I was really a demigod? It all seemed too surreal, too impossible to be true. But then again, what did I have to lose? My life as it was before was filled with nothing but emptiness and longing. I was always searching for something, something that could give me purpose, something that could make me feel whole. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the change that I had been waiting for. Meet me back here at this cliff at midnight in 3 days. Those were his last words to me that day. 3 days later, the clock struck midnight as I stood there at the edge of the cliff, staring out into the vast expanse of the ocean before me, the tiny scroll clutched tightly in my hand. I still had my doubts, but I needed to know if this was real. I needed to believe that my life had a greater purpose. As I waited, my heart pounding in my chest, my uncle appeared beside me. He was solemn, yet determined. He immediately took the scroll from me and began the ritual, his voice low and melodic as he spoke the ancient words. I watched in amazement as the sky turned a deep shade of purple, the stars shining like diamonds in the night. I could feel the power of the ritual coursing through my veins, a strange energy that made me feel both invincible and vulnerable at the same time. Then he handed back the scroll to me and told me to swallow it whole. My heart was racing as I did what he said, feeling the scroll pass through my throat and down into my stomach. And then my uncle pushed me off the cliff, jumping off after me. I plummeted down into the water below, feeling the cold, salty spray of the ocean hit my face. For a moment, everything was chaos and confusion, the world spinning around me. But then, as I sank deeper and deeper into the dark abyss, I felt a strange sense of peace and calm settle over me. The pressure around me seemed to increase with each passing moment. The darkness that surrounded me was total and all encompassing. Yet I felt an odd sense of comfort and familiarity, as if some part of me, at some point, had been here before. As I closed my eyes, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Had I made a terrible mistake? Or was this the beginning of something incredible?